School is the most important thing in your life. And while I hate school, I got a PhD. And I hate school. I hate everything about it. So somebody say, E, if you hate school so much, why you get a PhD? Because I hate school, but I love options. You can have average skill, but you can't have average will. You can't have average will. Like your will has to be phenomenal. You have to see basketball as the gateway. It's like a passport. Basketball is just your way to get in, and then once you get in, boom, then you dominate. So I'm telling you, you're not taking a test because they're giving you the test. You're taking a test that's about to change your life, your mama's life. And I know if you take the test serious, you'll kill it. When you go through your go-through, your siblings are watching you. When you go through your go-through, your friends are watching you. When you go through your go-through, your parents are watching you. And people will use your strength to get through their stuff.
Yo, what's up? What's up? What's up? It's your boy E.T., man. Look, super excited to be alive. Man, I wish I could have this moment for life right here, y'all. Big day for me, big day for the fam. I'm here in the birth place, the birth city, Chicago. Man, overlooking the lake, man, beautiful view. My son is a part of a firm that's releasing our NFTs in another week or so. But today I will have the privilege of meeting all the artists that came up with over, 100, 500, 600 different prints of myself for our launch. And I'll have lunch with them, dinner with them. We're doing an AMA, Ask Me Anything, as well as, like I said, they will be unveiling their pieces for me. I'll get a chance to see it before the public sees it. So, man, just super excited. Again, what a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. And I know what some of you guys are thinking. It's like, man, it's a lot going on. And it is, but we have to do our part to control what we can control. And what we can't control, we got to turn that over to God, and ask him to control it. With all of the stuff that's going on, man, you stress yourself out, if that's where you put your focus. Matter of fact, and I just want to share this. I know this is not a part of the podcast, but today I started something new, and I literally wrote down, the name of my family members, put a column beside each one, and just start chronicling, the things that I love most about them, and just started that today. Something I'll be doing the rest of the year, and just, really my focus. It's like, this is what I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on this other stuff. Like, this is what I want to focus on, so as a father, of course, I'm sure there are things that I could go, oh, my kids, whatever, but I this is what I want to focus on, and this is what I want them to hear coming out of my mouth, and these are the things that, I want to put out in the atmosphere. So I'm saying to my teachers as well, maybe for your students, man, this might be a great exercise, to write down your student's name. And if it's just one thing you could think of, what I'm saying, helpful, one thing you could think of, for instance, with my son, I put resilient, what I'm saying? He can not only bounce back, but he bounced back quickly, so for those of you who are out there, again, it's so much going on. Yes, I watch the news. I am one of those guys that, I get a healthy dose of what's going on in the world. But I don't get a healthy dose to allow it to affect me in a negative. I get a hefty dose so I can go, where can I be a blessing? Where can my team be a blessing? Where do I send my resources, to be a blessing, right? And then after that, after I'm finished with myself, my team, and my resources, then I turn the rest over to the creator. I was like, hey, you gotta be in those cities and those states or with those people, because I can't, I can't be in all places at all times. So just throwing that out there, guys. Again, we have to control the controllables, right? And that's what education is all about. We can't do it all, but we got a classroom with 15. We got a classroom with 20. We got a classroom with 30. We got our own building with our own resources, and we can do something to make a difference with that group, that we have been blessed to serve every single, school day. So once again, it's Extreme Teachers Podcast. I'm your boy E.T. And we're here to do three things. The first one I think is super important, especially as we talk about gas prices, right? We need to be fueled. You know what I'm saying? We need to be fueled. And not only fuel in our vehicles, we need to be fuel in our lives. You know, like we need energy. And so we're here to give you that energy. We're here to allow you to look at life, you know, on the bright side. You know what I'm saying? We invite you to look at life on the bright side. Number two, we're going to definitely give you, you know, a couple weeks, man, they've been giving the 20-piece nuggets. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, you know, it's the 8-piece, but, you know, these last couple of weeks, they've been giving the 20-piece nuggets, you know, and so we're definitely trying to give you some insight and some information because we truly believe applied information changes situations, right? And then finally, we all need somebody to lean on, you know, so we're here for those of you. You know, you like, man, I'm struggling here. I'm dealing with this here. Or, man, can you come help us here? You know, can you do it? We invite you to, you know, reach out to us. And I promise you, we can't be in all places at all times. But if we can get to you or you can get to us, I'm telling you, it'll be worth it. Katie, what are we talking about today? What's our topic?
We're going to start a new series and do data-driven instruction. So good time to talk about data in the year. You know, we're getting closer to the end of the year. I don't know if we can say that quite yet. That spring break is around the corner and the end of year is coming for you teachers. But this is a good time. I know there's a lot of testing going on. And how do we make sure that that testing doesn't stress us out? All of that stuff that you're just saying was so good for all of us to hear. Yeah. And think about how do we use data to drive our instruction? How do we use it to make us better educators, to serve our children better in and out of the classroom? And what does that look like in a lot of different ways? So let's talk data today. That's what we're going to do.
And can you, or any one of you, if you want to, can we break down just the term itself when we say data-driven instruction, maybe for a new teacher or somebody who's watching who may not even be familiar with, you know, the school district? Can you talk to us?
Yeah, for sure. You want to tell them what you think, Sam, and I'll look up like official definition for everybody.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So when I think of data-driven instruction, I think about the collection of data from your students, right? And then using that data to drive your instruction and make decisions.
Beautiful.
So in the simplest form, that's the way that is.
Yeah. And I would say for those of you who are like, oh, okay, you know, to me, it reminds me of, you know, basketball with the air of there was no stats. You know, it was just the air, just they just hooping. You know what I'm saying? They just out there, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You don't have the slides out there, you know, how many 3-pointers were made, 2-pointers.
Yeah.
Like you don't have, but you look at sports today, and I'm telling you, sports is probably more data driven than it's ever been before. You know, you're not even talking about 3-pointer, 2-pointer. Was it a 12-footer, 16-footer, 18-footer? You know, did he score best when he's coming off the bench? Is he better when he starts? You know, is he a better first half player? Does he have more points in the first half versus the second half? You know, is he a first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter kind of guy? You know what I'm saying? It's just, you know, and I think what coaches are able to do with this information, you know, is to not only, as you mentioned, Sam, inform their coaching, you know, but also put their players in the best position. You know, I saw a guy yesterday, he tried to dunk. And I'm telling you, I saw this dude in the first half, like he went up and monster dunk. But then in the fourth quarter, I was like, man, what's wrong with my man? Like he couldn't get off the ground. But I was like, you know what? He's probably, when you look at his playing minutes, you know, he's probably exhausted. And so what coach probably needs to do is figure out what's his peak minutes. You know, his peak minutes might be, you know, from 1 minute to 25 minutes. And when he gets around that 30-minute mark, maybe he's so exhausted that, you know, he's not at his peak. And so again, guys, you know, not to overcomplicate it, you know, for those of you who understand sports, you know, years and years ago, again, there were not a lot of stats. And can I say this? I'll be honest with you guys. I used to always wonder why, like, I have season tickets to so many different games and I never go. Like, I never knew why I never wanted to be at the arena. And it was because I miss hearing the stats. You know, like when you're watching the game, they just going back and forth, back and forth. No commentator, you know, but when you're watching it at home, you know, it's all kind of stats. They talk about what they did last week, the last time they played against, the Nets, what happened when they played again. And so I was like, yo, I really crave not just the game itself. Like, I don't love the sport itself by itself that much, but it is the combination of the actual sport with the data mixed in creatively, that makes me love the sport. Sam, you were about to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's kind of like a weight loss journey also, right? It's like you're trying different strategies, you're running, you're lifting weights, you're playing basketball, you're in the soccer league, you're eating, you cut out your carbs, right? Yeah. And then you go to get those results, right? And when you look on the scale, or like your, however you are tracking that, you go back and you look and you adjust your strategies based upon the results that you're getting. Yeah. And it's the same for teaching. It's the same in the classroom, right? You're trying all these different strategies and you are assessing the strategies and getting feedback. And then you're going back, you're looking at the data. And as you lesson plan and strategize for your students, you are using the strategies that are yielding the highest results.
Yeah, I like that.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's like thinking of that definition of insanity, right? Is when you do the same thing over and over and you expect a different result. So I know we've had this conversation before. When you take those same lesson plans and you try to do the exact same thing all the time, it's really not always going to be what's best for our students. So yeah, great conversation about how do we look at data regularly and then use that to inform our instruction. I'll hit you with the actual definition of data-driven instruction.
Let's go.
Is an educational approach that relies on information to inform teaching and learning. The idea refers to a method teachers use to improve instruction by looking at the information that they have about their students. So really what you just said, Sam, and I loved this sports analogy. I don't think that overcomplicated it. I think it made it easier to understand. Oh, yeah. Actually, when we've been in the schools with our playbook program, we've talked about that exact same sports analogy, right? I shared with students, I will never claim to be a sports expert, but my brother was the varsity basketball coach at the school where I was the reading specialist at the high school. And somehow I got roped into being the stats person. So I had the iPad his first couple of years, I should say, of coaching. Eventually somebody that was better than me got this job. But I had the iPad and I had to keep track of all the stats, right? And then they used my classroom to review film each week and to go over the stats and make their game strategies. So I was not a part of the coaching. I was over here working on grades, but I got to overhear the conversations that the basketball team was having in my classroom every week. And that is exactly what they're doing. They're looking at every week's data and making decisions on how do they perform better the next game. Yeah. And so as teachers, even though sometimes that feels like extra work, I think it actually ends up making our work easier because it's more meaningful and we get better results when we take the time to look at the data on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the stat that the NBA uses, I think, is by Hollinger. He created the PER, which is the player efficiency rating. And by the way, Michael Jordan is the greatest all time. He has the highest proficiency rating in NBA history. So that data is a combination of points, assists, steals. And when you talk about longevity throughout the game, Mike is known as a closer, as a clutch player, as a cleaner. And so we already know no matter what he did the first 3 quarters, fourth quarter, if the game is close, we know we have somebody to give the ball to. And I think when you're talking about being a clutch teacher, at the end, as you're planning and you have your pacing calendar and you're thinking through, okay, these are the things that I'm going to do in the class activity wise. These are the assessments that I'm going to give, whether they, just short, hands up, raise your hands up if you understand, if you don't. I think all of that has to do with making sure what are the end goals? What are we trying to achieve here, right? And those indicators throughout will tell you what you need to do to make those adjustments. So I always tell people, to uncomplicate the definition of data is just information. What do you do with the information that you get? What are you seeing? And it's not a judgment personally, it's just information, right? So yeah, player efficiency rating.
I love that.
I love it. And I want to say before we got a special guest we're going to bring on, I wanted to say that there's a group of you out there, when you think about this subject, you lose your energy. It doesn't energize you. You're like, man, numbers, reporting. Like I used to be that guy. I'll be honest with you. And so I want you to do 2 things. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about like, how can this idea of getting information, how can it energize you? Because I think a lot of times when we say something doesn't energize us, it's because of the focus again that we're looking at.
That's good.
So if you're looking at the part of, I got to write stuff down, I've got to take time to read stuff, I've got to organize stuff, whatever, manage stuff. Like, that's the part that could probably, put you in a situation where you're like, hey, this is not something that I like. It doesn't energize me, right? But if you look at the other parts and go, man, I really do love these students and I want what's best for these students. And by me getting the information so that, one, I'm informed, and two, they're informed, it's going to help this student when they get this information to be able to make the adjustments they need to be able to make in order to be able to do well, right? So that part energizes me. That's the part that I'm like, oh, man, if I can help, somebody see something the way they've never seen it before, like, oh, let's go. So I want you guys to be careful, because a lot of you sometimes, honestly, when it comes to systems, and structure and strategy and, organization, management, you automatically, have this, I don't want to do it. I don't like, but again, I'm telling y'all, it's like playing basketball without keeping score. You know what I'm saying? Everybody just hooping. You know what I'm saying? Everybody just going back and forth, shooting the ball. And if you guys have ever, really paid attention to it, you will see at times where the players will look up at the Jumbotron screen. Right? And they're looking at it because they're looking at the numbers, because they don't have the ability while they're playing to actually play the game and keep up with all of the numbers at the same time. So you're probably thinking in their head, they're going, 2. We scored 2. They scored 2. Okay, it's 10-5. Like, maybe in the first couple minutes, but by the time you get into the third and fourth quarter, you're going back and forth, you have no idea what the score is. You have no idea how many fouls your guys have. You have no idea how many times out. And we know it's true. I mean, I hate to bring this up, but there was a time where Chris Webber called a timeout, and they didn't have any timeouts. You know what I'm saying? And it's why? Because he didn't have the ability to play and keep up, with the stats at the same time. And like, how critical was that for him if he would have known we don't have any time? So that's like your students are going through the school year and they don't know. They have no idea how close they are to benchmark. They have no idea, how proficient they are in each subject matter, and how, I used to tell my students when I taught the GED class, let's say, for instance, they would, and this is how I use data, right? They would say to me, man, I failed a math part, by 5 points, right? And I used to be like, oh, we good. And they was like, what do you mean by that? I failed by 5 points. I'm like, no. Actually, we only need to learn 1 or 2 concepts, and you can go back and you can pass. 5 points is really only 1 question, and you probably missed that 1 question 3 times. And because you missed it 3 times, you missed the 5 points. So what we'll do is we'll do 2, right? We'll have to go over a whole bunch of stuff. We'll just go over 2 concepts that you don't really know. And it was like, how you going to figure that out? I was like, well, when you took the actual GED, it showed me which ones you passed and which ones you failed, right? So based on what you know, I can say, oh, no, we don't need to go to trigonometry. That's a lot. All we need to do is figure out some geometry, and we can, and you like shapes and you like sizes because you play sports. So it's all about the rectangle. It's all about the box on the back of the hoop. It's all about the circle, the ball. So I know you love geometry. So let's sit down and learn a couple concepts in geometry, and I can get you taken care of. And they would go back and, and eventually pass that. Or if it was English, 8 parts of speech is like, okay, maybe there was, the adverb or the adjective you didn't understand, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe the prepositional phrase, like you weren't really clear on the prepositional phrase. So like, I got you. Don't worry about it. By, around, in, through, like, I got you. Like, it's not what you think. It's easy. I got you. And by them learning that 1 or 2 concepts, they would go back, and pass it again. So I just want to say to my educators, like, don't look at all these numbers, from the district level, state, federal. There's all of these, the bureaucracy, it's all this red tape. Like, no, it's actually information that will do what? Inform you and inform those who are in your classroom And so, yeah, and I'm telling you, that's going to energize you, get you pumped up. So just look at the right side of it. That's all I'm asking. Go look again. You're looking at the bad side. Go look again.
It's like reframing. We have to reframe the way we're looking at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sam, you hurry up and bring your person in before we do the whole podcast.
Let's go.
I'm going to share on this topic. So let's get her in here.
I am so excited to introduce Principal Brenda Smith, live from St. Louis, Missouri at Vashon High School. I'm telling you, Brenda, in my professional education life, Brenda is the leader that's made the greatest impact on my life personally. And I just want to share a little information about her. And then she's got a lot of knowledge to break down for us. But in 2003, Brenda was actually the senior class president of Vashon High School and the valedictorian. And now she currently serves as principal at Vashon High School, her high school. And so just a wonderful leader. She has been an instructional coach for 4 years. So talk about data. She knows a lot about data. And then has served as the principal for the last 6 years. And I think what is so unique about that is, the graduating class before she started her principalship, they had like 4 different principals in their 4 years. But Brenda has been really committed, started with a very specific group of students. And I had the honor of being on her leadership team at that time. So I got to see just her in excellence. I've seen her take the shoes off her feet and give it to her students, right? Like such a servant leader, and has really done amazing things at Vashon around literacy and lots of data points, and including an advisory program and just really strengthening the academics at Vashon. So I won't take up too much time, but it's an honor. E has visited Vashon several times. And so they have crossed paths, but so excited to have you on here, Brenda.
Hey, speaking of stats, she got some impressive stats.
Stats for days. I couldn't even read the whole list. I had to
I'm like MJ.
Man, thank you guys. I am absolutely excited. ET, I don't even know if you know, like every year I'm finding little snippets and I'm using it to continue to motivate my teachers and my students. And so you've been kind of instrumental in the planning all the way back. Sam, remember, first assignment, what's your why? We cutting out magazines, we showing the video. Like that's been my motivation since I started. We kind of built it all. So definitely excited to be here and excited to talk about data for real. Like that is the essence of getting better forever.
Good. Well, talk to us. Hey, if you don't mind, like, where would you start for people who, again, like I said, they're not energized by data. They're not energized by structure. You know, they're phenomenal at being practitioners, right? But they don't necessarily see how planning with being a practitioner can really inform, and lead your practice. So what would you say to those individuals? And then give us some insight on data.
Yeah, so definitely. I think the very first thing is always making it not seem so complicated. Of course, for me, I'm a math person. I taught math. That's my initial degree. But for the common teacher that's coming in, it's like, you want me to look at all this assessment data, but it's really the thing that we do on a day-to-day basis. When I go to the gym to work out, I turn around if I left my watch. If it's not tracking my calories, if it's not telling me how much I burn, I don't want to do it. Like, I need to see that. That's the type of data we talk about. And so that's always what I start with, is just asking even my teachers, where do you see data in everyday life? What things do you use? You use data all the time to inform your next steps. That's what I'm talking about with data. And so as much as possible, we try to make it as normal, everyday type things. And even to the students, you need to know where you're going. You all talked about basketball, and it's anything about the V. That's what we are. We are basketball. And so it's like, I'm at the games, I'm talking about data every day. I'm like, hey, I saw you miss that many free throws. What you doing at practice tomorrow?
Yeah.
It's everyday life. And when people start to see that, then that's the first thing. They're like, okay, I see how I use it. It ain't that bad.
I love it. Everyday life. I love it. Now, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I have you talk about discouraged. I have walked a half a mile and realized I left my phone at home, and I was like, "Do you keep walking when you can't track it?" Like, and I had to ask myself, "Are you walking for your health or for the numbers?" I'm like, both. I need to know what yeah. So I love it. That's great. That's great. That's great.
Right.
Every day, make it every day. What else would you share with us about the importance of data, especially in the classroom, as it relates to teachers, students, or, I always say one of my biggest challenges is there is a lot of data out here, in the world, whether it be software or strategies, professional development. But I feel one of the things that, for me at least, that I've always felt like was a disadvantage to our students is that they don't necessarily get all the data that has something to do with them.
Yeah.
I've always kind of felt like, it's a lot of numbers floating around. It's a lot of teachers with this stuff. But since it does impact the students themselves, like, why don't they have it? What would you say about that as it relates to our schools putting it in the hands of the kids? Or how can we best put it in the hands of the kids so that, they can make those paradigm shifts or those, strategy shifts that they need to make to do better academically?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It starts kind of with creating a data-driven culture. I can remember back as a teacher, and I'm in my classroom trying to collect data, and sometimes the numbers aren't what you want to see. Like, they're not, they mastered everything. And for teachers, it's like, do I show that to my students? Yes. You definitely show them to them, because that's the only way you're going to get to where you're going. So I always tell teachers, I'm like, hey, it's like saying I'm trying to get out of town somewhere, but I'm not going to map where I started. How you going to get to your destination if you don't map where you're starting from? And so that's been my plan. So creating a data-driven culture. One year, I decided to make the whole theme of the school year around data. So if I find it important, teachers will find it important, and then it'll trickle down to kids. So our theme for that year was living on the edge at the V. And we defined EDGE as educating scholars, data-driven instruction, growing our knowledge to excel in every way. So we took those letters and we defined it. And then we did some amazing things to invest the teachers first, because you got to invest them in the reality. We knew our kids were coming into us 3 and 4 grade levels behind where they should be. The question is, are we going to let them end up there? Like, we're not responsible for how they come to us. We are going to be responsible for how they leave. And so I took the teachers, we went rock climbing that year. It was like, we're living on the edge, and edge represents data. And we talked about the simplest forms of data. So I'm not like, we're not going to track every single assessment, because I think that's the issue. You got to pick a few points and really look at those points. And so reading, like, man, if our kids can't read, we shutting doors. I listened to one of your podcasts, ET, and one of the things you talked about was, I got this PhD for options, for opportunities. So if our kids can't read, those options and opportunities are limited.
Absolutely.
And so we picked that. That was our beginning focus. And then you asked the question kind of about how do you invest students in it? And it does become being open and honest with them, having the conversations, because when they celebrate their growth, it is the most amazing feeling in the world for a kid to be like, Miss Smith, I grew my 2 years. Yay. And we in the classroom celebrating that 2 years growth. When the first conversation wasn't great, you were behind 2 years. Now we got a starting point. We can keep pushing.
I love it so much. And teachers do often feel like, should I tell them this data if it's not good? I mean, I'll admit, I feel like that because you care so much about the kids. You don't want to hurt their feelings or something. But there is so much power in showing them actual data. And then it's just about the way that you frame it. Just like you just said, like, this is where we're starting from. That means it's going to be really exciting to see where you get after we put the work in together. So I love that.
Is there, and Vondell, Sam, you guys can chime in on this. Is there a way to give bad? I don't want to call it bad, but let's just say it's not.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not exciting news.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, is there a way to talk to students in a way that, it is the truth, but giving it to them so that it does not further discourage them? It's like, because if I'm 2-3 years behind, I'll be honest with you guys. I remember dropping out of high school after I had a conversation with my counselor. That I was like, I'm gone. Because the conversation we had was, I mean, by the time he broke down, how many credits I had versus how many I needed to graduate.
Okay.
And he was a cool guy. Like looking back,
Yeah.
I remember he was like a cool guy, but the information was given to me in a way where it was no solutions to it. It was just like, yo,
The
you're
plan.
gonna have to, you're gonna be graduating when you're 19 years old. And I'm just like, yo, I'm from the city. This is not an option. Like, it's a lot of roasting going on. It's a lot of bullying going. It's just a lot for me to have to come back a year later and you're telling me that I may graduate first semester, I may graduate second semester. You're not 100% sure. My girlfriend, she about to graduate on time. She headed off to college. Like, yo, that's not me coming back for another year and doing something I really didn't like to do in the first place. Like, that's not an option for me. You know what I'm saying? And I left. Like I said, I don't remember him being aggressive. I don't remember him being volatile. Like, I don't remember his tone being that. I don't remember any of that. It was just the information was so overwhelming that when I walked out of that room and then I told my homeboys who had already dropped out, they were like, oh, E, come on. Like, here, look at the information. Like, hey, come with us. We dropped out. You should drop out. And so I dropped out of school. And I will say this to you guys. I never imagined dropping out. Like, as much as I don't come from a family of scholars, I still never dreamed of like dropping out of high school. Like, I never saw myself being that person who would not be in school, who would be homeless. Like, I never saw that for myself, and so I think this is probably a good spot to stick with and stay on and get everybody's insight. How do you give not so good information to a group of people and keep them inspired or encouraged, or at least keep them hopeful? Because that's what I lost. After that conversation, I lost hope.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick and say this. It was a year where I taught sixth grade math, and this was years ago. I went to a conference, and they were talking about like effective ways to get buy-in from students around data.
Okay.
And so they presented this amazing climbing the ladder to college board. And so they had stickers, like all of the stickers were assigned to different tools that you need to climb the mountain, like a flashlight, you need a backpack, so on and so forth. And so I took that idea back into my sixth grade classroom and told the students, hey, these are all of the standards that we're going to learn. And it was an upfront conversation that if you see this sticker next to your name, that means that you've done what you need to do in terms of this standard. And it was non-threatening. It was all the way in the back of the classroom. At any point throughout the class, they can go and look and see if they have the little item. And I think it was like 16 items. And it was so cool because at the time, the principal, who's now the Houston superintendent, he used to bring guests in my room to show off my classroom. I was like the teacher's pet. And he would take everybody to that back board. And it was a quick indication that if they got it or not. And it was non-threatening. So the conversations that I would have with the kids, like my little check-ins and one-on-ones with the kids who didn't get the flashlight or the backpack, I would say, these are some things that we need to work on. These are some areas of growth, not weaknesses, but these are some areas that we need to work on. So I think even language is really important, how you develop vocabulary around data, especially when you're dealing with students. So it's non-threatening, but it's a way to say, hey, this is just information. And my goal and my idea is to help you grow. But I did have a question for Brenda real quick. What are some creative ways that you've done incentivizing meeting measurement? Because I think like that's where we want to go with this, right? We don't want data to be like E said, like, man, I'm just losing energy just thinking about the word data. So how do you get investment and buy-in around like, man, let's use data in a creative way? Anything you've done in the past or anything that you're doing now?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I'm gonna say, it's how you present it. If you're an educator and you have not heard Rita Pearson's "Every Child Deserves a Champion,"
I love that.
Like,
that is awesome.
The plus two says you ain't all bad.
There you go.
So a lot of times it's about showing it that way. So as a classroom teacher, every year I try to get more and more creative. One year I used different color CDs. So they got that platinum CD. When they reached a certain level, they got the CD that was like a light silver at a certain level. So again, those platinum people got to name their albums. and use something that connected to them. So now they want their albums up there. Miss Smith, you ain't moved my album yet. I've seen race cards done. I know as Sam's academic instructional coach, they had the big bio goals, big bio goals. And they were
the DNA tracker.
They had the DNA tracker in the biology class. So it's like, how do you invest the students in there? How do you ask them, hey, we are looking at the data, but what would interest you in continuing to grow in a positive light? So we're not necessarily focusing on the negative piece of it, but it's +2 says you ain't all bad.
I love it.
And I love that. And let me tell you, so Brenda worked like Teacher America's Institute and trained so many teachers over the years. She is known as a rock star in the TFA Institute world, okay? And she would come in teaching everybody how to track data, all these different pictures of data trackers. I just had a flashback of all of that, Brenda. But I think when it comes also to like you just talked about, students coming in 3, 4, reading levels behind. And then just the fact that you implemented and led a program within our school, like I saw you had all of us involved, right? And that resulted in 1.8 years of growth. So I would also love for you to talk about that, because I remember as Dean of Students, I was in there, I'm learning how to give the reading assessment. We're all doing this together. We're all assessing. We're having conversations with kids and being very open about what the reading scores are so that we can have that growth. So I think it would be great for us to hear about that process and just your thoughts about that.
Yeah, so I think initially it was, even like right now, I'm working on my dissertation and it's all on like growing reading levels in the high school. So it was like a team effort. I had all these people coming saying, let's try this. But it was about how do we all get on the same page. So it was reading across the content. We're not just going to put it on the English teachers, the math teachers. How are you working on reading in your classroom? And so when we got that common goal, when we're looking at data, we have to be on the same page with where we're going to end up. What's the goal? What are we working towards? And then everybody take kind of a piece at how you are going to support that. And so for the reading program, it was, we are tracking data. I went to the kids. We showed the average reading scores. I told them we Wolverines. That's not what Wolverines look like. So we amped them up about the end goal was to be Wolverines. And this is what it means. So once we got kids on board, it was like, okay, now we got to figure out a way to track it so that it's not daunting, but it is fun. The other thing is this idea of efficacy. So I always talk to my teachers about efficacy. You have to believe that you are the person and you have the right tools to make this happen, no matter where our kids come in at, no matter what's the situation at home. When they get here, we're talking about reading. Then we talk the numbers. I told kids every year, I don't even know if I had the right amount. I just went in the auditorium. I'm like, y'all, I just spent $50,000 on books. So for my kids, this was so important. They don't even know it's the school money. They probably thought it was my money. I don't know what they thought. But it was like, it feels like she's not playing. If she spent this much amount of money for reading and that investment, now we can really get to tracking. And so kids knew their goals. And then we picked the right assessments. And so as educators, we over-assess kids all the time. We couldn't do that. We knew that one assessment, our kids blew through. They clicked the answers. It never gave us accurate data. So we found a different one. We went to the benchmark assessment systems where they're one-on-one tests. So now I need enough teachers in the building to do one-on-one tests with students. So we know every portion of their reading deficit. We know the phonics. We know how they pronounce words. We know, is it comprehension? Is it decoding? What is the issue that they're missing? Now we're going to focus on those exact issues and not just the number. So for a kid, it's amazing to say your fluency is great. Like you can read, you know those words. We got to work on your comprehension. Now I'm not behind on everything. I'm behind on this one thing, and everybody's going to get behind me and pushing me for that one thing.
This is amazing. This kind of conversation, and this is high school we're talking about. This is
high school, yeah.
Not a lot. I mean, I don't know. I should have data to support this. I don't know, but I don't think very many high schools are digging that deeply into reading scores and finding out what is it that they need the support with, right? Because if we talk about reading, there are 5 components of reading, all those things you just named, right? The phonics and fluency. And at the high school level, motivation is one of those 5 components. Yeah. So knowing how to pinpoint what's missing for your students and then be able to deliver is huge. And a lot of times that doesn't happen at the high school level. They skip past all of that because they think, well, those assessments are for the younger kids. But if our kids are struggling, they need them too. So that's amazing. I love it.
Katie, I think you hit on something really big though. In this process, a lot of the material that we started to find on our kids' level were written for elementary schools.
It's hard.
It is the hardest thing to go find material for a high school student to be motivated to grow levels. And so that's how I picked my dissertation. I'm gonna write my topic on it and I'm gonna find the resources that says this is what high school students need. I'm the varsity basketball player and you wanna give me a first grade reading book and tell me I can't read this? No, I'm not gonna do it. But if you put something in there that's at my level and you pick programs that work for me, then yes, I'm going to be motivated to do it. And I can still keep my status as the big time high school varsity basketball player.
Yeah. And you know what's so funny when you talk about motivation? So, you know, I do a lot of, we do a lot of motivational, videos, right? And one of the things that we discovered in doing these videos, we try to do B-roll that will actually motivate. So our thing is like, yeah, the voice is cool. My passion, energy is cool, but if we could take images, and actually create motivation. So we're very intentional and deliberate about, okay, we know where we're trying to get them to go. So we're going to use B-roll. It's crazy that less than probably 3% of B-roll is Black and brown B-roll. It's the craziest thing. Like you go to Google and you type in whatever you type in, it's like, it's almost impossible to find. And so we start saying to ourselves like, yo, let's grab this camera and let's start creating it. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be intentional and deliberate about if we say a father, we can find not just a Caucasian father, but a Black father, a Latino father, Asian Pacific father, a Tongan father. You know what I'm saying? Like as much as we possibly can, like multiple, whatever. And so that's important because, if you're asking somebody to read or do something and they don't see themselves in it, like you're not gonna motivate me. You're not motivating me by not showing me. And I think that's another important piece. It's like we have to bring in the individuals who inspire these kids. So, I always talk about Biggie Smalls. I'm like, yo, let's go back. Like Biggie was a phenomenal English student. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's show the documentaries where his teachers are talking about, his English teachers specifically are talking about him. Like, this is critical. Let's talk about the fact that, people like Lil Wayne were taking AP courses in high schools. Like, we got to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, Lil Wayne isn't just Lil Wayne because he's Lil Wayne. He's not been in the industry since he was 16. Like, this kid has been in the industry 12, 13, 14 years old, for a reason. He had college level courses. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to talk about that. We got to talk about the fact that, even though, again, I talked about this before, because it's the funniest thing to me, how Kanye will speak against, hot college dropouts.
I was just about to talk about that.
It's like, bro, everything you talk about is college. You know what I'm saying? Because your mom was an English professor, and chair at a major university in Chicago. So it's like, this is the stuff that we have to also bring in, because if you're bringing in, just Winston Churchill. Now I'm mature, I'm older, I get it. Winston Churchill, like, no questions asked. Gandhi, Mother Teresa, gurus, beasts of their time. No question. But there's a disconnect between the average 15-year-old and John F. Kennedy. You know what I'm saying? There's a disconnect. But when you say Biggie had a love for the English language and was able to tell stories because of his not in love. When you talk about Kanye, it's like, yo, where do I sign up for? Or you have those kids who love reading, but they don't do it because it's like, everybody's going to think I'm a nerd. Everybody's going to tease me for doing it. But then when you highlight it and you make it important, now those kids who really do love literacy or who are on the borderline, Because I find there are a lot of borderline students that we don't talk about. We talk about people who do well. We talk about kids who fail. But there's a lot of borderline that if we focus on that borderline, we can shift them, get them off the edge, Brenda. We get them off the edge and get them in the middle. So I just think for me as a learner, like I didn't realize I was a learner. Like I didn't realize that I loved learning. I just didn't like in the traditional setting. But man, take me to a movie. My boys hate going to movies with me. They're like, E, how you get all that out the Matrix? Like how you get all of that out of Richard Williams? Like, bro, you can't just sit there and watch it for entertainment. And I'm like, nope, not when you get a 4-year degree, a master's degree, and a PhD. You can't. You know what I'm saying? Like your brain constantly, running and racing. And so I think that's important too when we talk about motivation. Just making sure that everybody sees people that they look up to, that they admire, doing the things that we are asking them to do, and they don't think that it's just isolated to a couple geeks. And I don't use the word geek in a negative sense. I just mean that there are people who are naturally talented and gifted and don't have to work toward a certain, the aptitude is just there. But we have to teach our kids that there are other people who look like them, who come from where they come from, that also have that genius. And they have it, as well. So that's good. That's good. Y'all taking it to another level today.
And that's why we would use your books in our advisory program.
Definitely,
right?
Yeah,
but remember, we even took pictures with books. So we were looking at that. We were looking at the old posters in the library. Like, they don't know these people. Right. All right, come on, y'all. We about to get our photo ops on. Right. All of us got books. We're snapping pictures. Exactly what you said. Yeah.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Yep. I made my whole high school staff do the same thing. So like the read posters, but with the teachers.
Yep.
Yeah, and they were asked to choose books that the kids actually wanted to read. I love it.
I think speaking of motivation, also, E, this is getting a little bit away from data, but I'm just
find a way to draw it back. We can bring it back.
We'll go back. But seriously, this has, people will argue historically, this has been one of the most difficult times to be a school leader and an educator, and would just love to hear from you, like, what gets you up every day, right, to like keep this train moving, and what advice do you have for teachers and school leaders as we're in this state right now, right, and people are like, don't want to be here, do not want to be here, just would love to hear your perspective on that.
For Brenda, right?
Yeah.
Yes, for Brenda.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Come on, girl. It's all about you. Come on.
This has been a year. We've experienced things that we never imagined as we were learning to become educators. And so instead of, at this point, focusing on what's happened in the past, we can't change that. I am really, really excited in trying to get educators to think about what we learned and how we're going to implement that in the future. And so all my conversations right now, even when teachers come and was like, this happened and this happened, I'm like, but what did we learn from that? We had to do all these COVID tracing and figure out where, this kid was and how do we educate this kid given their circumstances. We learned so much. So right now I have a whole focus group that is dedicated to copying those gems down, getting them down and documenting what did we learn so that we plan to have an effective school year next year. I'm gonna just plug this real quick. One of those things is just, what do kids like to read? And so we're just coming up on looking at our advisory books and picking new topics. And E.T., your book came up, I think it's like Average Skill, Phenomenal Wheel.
Yeah, Michelle.
So that's the book that we're going to buy for our seniors. And so if you get some time, you in St. Louis, we definitely could use that motivation.
Let's make it happen.
That's what I'm talking about. But that is it. It is not to dwell on where we've been, but where we've been has taught us. I think T.I. says, remember, when it's in your blood, you were born with what it takes. I think Jay-Z says, like, every L was not a loss for me, but it's something that I learned from. So take the loss and turn it into learn. And so that is my focus. And that's what I'm telling all educators. If we keep talking about the past, we're going to get bogged down by that. But if we talk about what we learned from it, we're going to be able to start and have an amazing year based off of what we've been through.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Sam, too, I think it's important when we talk about, for real, data. Of course, you got old, you got new, and then whatever we're going to, create as a result of both for the future. And what I try to do is I try to show young people the beauty in coming from a culture that has always had to operate from a deficit. You know what I'm saying? Slavery was a deficit, and so whatever you're dealing with right now, it's not slavery. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care how bad it is. It's like historically, we've had to, always, maybe have, more credentials or be 3 times better for the same opportunity. Like, that's not something that you're crying over or something that you are like, why me? No, I tell kids all the time, the deficit that my ancestors worked from actually prepares me for situations like this. So COVID isn't like, COVID isn't, and again, not to be disrespectful, but COVID ain't slavery. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't compare to the, and so this is important. And again, you see my daughter is a huge like study of history. And so she not only brings up slavery, but the Holocaust, and like really showing people like, yo, you have various cultures and situation. And so it's like, yo, if we can get through that, we can get through surely we get through this, right? So let's use the numbers. This number went through this and they went through that, but look at where we are. And so I try to, and I don't want to use the word shame, but sometimes that's the word. I try to shame, our young people into understanding like, yo, this ain't the worst thing that ever happened. And if our ancestors were able to get through it, knowing that they wouldn't necessarily get a reward from it, like a lot of what they did, like Martin Luther King was like, yo, everybody want a long life. He said it, longevity has its advantages, but he was like, yo, I already know after tonight, I'm letting it be known I'm about to be murdered. Like, I already know I'm about to be murdered, but I'm willing to be murdered for the future. Like, I'm willing to be murdered so that the future generation can be in a better situation than I was in. So that's saying I tell kids, that's him saying, I'm going to sacrifice my wife having a husband, my kids having a father. Like, I'm about to sacrifice everything and not get a reward so you can get a reward. And so I'm like, yo, now we live in a time where you can actually get a reward for the work you put forth. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's unbelievable. But like Eric Thomas can get a PhD and be rewarded for it financially in a way that Martin Luther King couldn't be rewarded for it. So it's like, come on, kids. Like, I feel y'all on the COVID boy and the stress or whatever, but my grandma was literally feeding 14 kids without a career. She had no career. You know what I'm saying? She did not have a career. She had a job at best, but she was able to feed 14 and then feed their kids. You know what I'm saying? So if grandma could do that with this little, like, yo, we could do so much more with what we have. And that's why I think data is important, because you're able to show people what's possible when you show them history and you show them the numbers. This is what's possible. This is why we look up to Steph Curry. We don't look up to Steph Curry because he's shooting. We look up to Steph Curry because we're showing them, yo, this is where people used to shoot from. You know what I'm saying? Historically, this is what a 3-pointer was historically. Like, where you shooting from, this like a 6-pointer. You know what I'm saying? Like, and one day they probably will, switch from 2 to 3 to 4 because it's just unbelievable. But they're showing this is where the benchmark used to be. This is what Steph Curry is doing. And as a result of Steph Curry doing it, now there are more kids coming in doing the same thing. I think they said recently they teased them, but they was like, yo, you messed up the game, Steph. Like, you're tearing up the game of basketball. You got these kids just shooting from the locker room. And so this has been phenomenal for everyone that's listening. I don't care if you're not an educator. Use the numbers. Use the information that you have. Brenda, I don't know if you heard me share, but like, yo, I'm writing down my family members' statistics every day, and we're just gonna leave them in different spots, refrigerator, wherever. And I just want them to see it. Like, yo, this is who you are, and this is what makes you sweet. We were at the dinner table yesterday. My daughter's like, yo, we're gonna leave a tip. We're gonna pay for the people. We're gonna leave a tip. We're gonna pay for the people next to it. I'm saying it's just kind of like, they were like, whoa, it's whose birthday? She's like, my birthday, but this is what we do as a family. Like, we bless people at restaurants. We leave enormous tips. And so for me, my daughter, I'm like, yo, you need to understand that's some sweet stats right there. Like, don't take that for
that's
granted.
powerful.
Everybody's not doing that. That's big. That you
That's
are
big.
24 and you thinking about other people and not just yourself. So I want her to see the stats. I want my son to see the stats, and I want the stats to inform their everyday life so they can continue to do the things that they do great so they can get the rewards of that. So, man, we got to bring Brenda back. I think.
Yeah.
Let's put Brenda some more.
Fire.
So fire. Hey, before we leave today, because I think this is maybe our towards the end of the month of March episode, and it's March's reading month, and we talked so many good book literacy things here. So I asked everybody to maybe bring a book recommendation that we can kind of wrap up with today, if that's okay for March's reading month. Do you want to tell us?
Change Scenes.
Love it. Amanda Gordon, right?
Change Scenes. This is it. Oh, hey, and when you talk about, real quick, I know we don't have a lot of time, but when you talk about representation, oh man, this book, man, let me just give y'all a couple.
Beautiful.
Man, I just want you to. Okay, hold on. I'll show you my favorite page.
Phenomenal.
Hold on, let me show you my favorite page. Hold on. This one right here. Right here. Everybody with their.
Yes.
I love it. My son got that from the library, and they have a version at the library with the little buttons that will read it to them, and it's her voice. So it's really cool because he could sit and read that book on his own and listen to her voice reading the words to him. So I love it. I'll jump in and share. I have two. I couldn't pick one, but if we're talking about little kids, right? My teachers of the little ones, I'm always saying we've got to make sure that from the very beginning we get them to love reading. So Dog Loves Books is one of my favorites. It's like a silly story, but really important that from a very tiny age, we're convincing them that reading is not like a chore, but it's something that is so fun, and we're encouraging them to love it from the very beginning. And then I went off of the teaching theme here, but just as we're talking about teachers needing energy right now and like motivation, teachers, we want you to take care of yourselves. I know Sam was just talking last episode, like pause the screen and do something that is good for you so that you're energized to take care of others. So I am currently reading Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes, and it is so good. I can't even put it down.
My girl.
So teachers, if you just need something that is going to just fill your soul and make you laugh and smile and cry and all the things, Shonda Rhimes is amazing. And so I would recommend that one.
I love it.
Yeah, let me go ahead and jump in with Jump, no pun intended. This is by the chairman of Jordan Brand. He's actually one of my mentors, Larry Miller, and he tells a story. And this is more for high school, college age. There's some graphics in there in terms of colorful language, but the story is a story of redemption. He made a mistake and murdered somebody. Now, when I say mistake, he made a mistake. He murdered another young man and served prison time for it. It was concealed and kept all the way through his journey up until, this past year. He called me, he called Michael Jordan and Phil Knight and said, hey, it's something that I need to tell you guys I've been hiding. And so this book reveals everything that went on. He got out of prison through a second base program. And the program was like, hey, you served this time. You 16, we'll get you out, but you got to go to school. He got out and started armed robbing people. It's crazy. But he became the board chair for Jordan Brand. He reconnected to the family, and now he's creating a scholarship fund and going back into the prisons to ensure that they have a release program through education. So very, very powerful book.
I love it. Just really quickly, A Promised Land, Barack Obama. Love learning about his journey and just seeing photos. And speaking of photos, I have to say this really quickly. I went to the High Art Museum in Atlanta and got to see the presidential photos of Michelle and Barack Obama by Kehinde Wiley and Amy Sherald, and that brought it to life even more, just learning about all the details and seeing them in person. If you have the opportunity to do that, I strongly encourage you to do that. It's amazing. So, yeah, Promised Land, Barack Obama.
Cool.
Yeah, so I don't have a book because I didn't know this was happening, but I have a book.
Put you on the spot. Sorry.
I have a gym for educators right now. We just did this for it was like Reading Across America's week a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And so we did a scavenger hunt with our kids. We gave them topics that they're interested in, and they had to come find books that match each one of those topics. And the first advisory to finish won, and I'm so excited. The advisory that won was one of our self-contained special education advisories, and they picked the best books, and most of their books was by an author, Jason Reynolds. And when I say Jason has some absolute amazing books for students,
yes.
I can't even just pick one, but I was so hyped to see my kids get so hyped about a little scavenger hunt of things and books. So that's my jam. Make sure you try that with your kids. They absolutely loved it.
And kids
Also,
love his books. Yeah.
So one more. Secrets to Success by Dr. Eric Thomas.
Yep.
Maybe you heard of this guy, but he was one of the first authors in terms of high school kids that I was able to play the Audible and read the book.
Yes,
So if you haven't heard of Secrets to Success, it's a good book by a guy by the name of Dr. Eric Thomas.
That might be our junior book. We didn't have a book for the juniors. It sounds like that might be our book.
Yeah,
I think that might be.
So powerful.
Yeah. So good. Oh, you're on mute, Eve.
You're muted.
We don't want to hear that wisdom you're wrapping us up with. We want to make sure we hear it. I mean,
Yeah, shameless plug. This is our first book through a publishing company, Penguin Publishing Company. September, the book comes out. My birthday week, we'll be doing our first book tour here in Chicago. The book is called You Owe You. So I'm super excited about the new release, You Owe You. And I think I think it's going to be life changing. So and you know what? I want to say to you readers out there, if you read enough, one day you'll become a writer. I never liked English until it was brought to me in the speaking form, and I realized I love it. You can't speak what words you don't know, right? And so we're going on our 5th book now, and I'm working on another 2 books. One book is called Execution. The real secret to success. And then we've got a book coming out, 0 to a Million, how CJ and I created a multi-million-dollar enterprise, through motivational speaking. So again, you can start off getting kicked out of English, failing English in college multiple times. And I'm talking about 101, I'm not talking about the 300 level, but through finding what energizes you, you can see it from a different angle and make it happen. So, man, thank y'all so much, Brenda. Look forward to having you back on. Of course, shout out Sam, Vondell, Katie, and Brandon. It's back to you. Let's make it happen.
Welcome back, everybody, to the office hours, where it's time for us to go back to school and review and recap some of the most impactful points from today's broadcast. Now, today, we're talking about data-driven instruction. We've got some great information to cover, so let's dive in. Number 1 is that data drives decisions. See, ET gave us the example of sports. He said, you really can't find a single sport in the world nowadays that doesn't use data to drive their decisions. Because the reality is, when we gather data, we become informed. We become qualified to make good decisions. Without the data, we're really just winging it. And yeah, we can try and make it sound a little better. We can call it something else. We can say intuition or feel or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's really just winging it. Now, some of us may intuitively understand this data subconsciously, but when you bring that information and you bring that data into conscious awareness, when you bring it into the light, a lot of times the path forward will illuminate itself based on simply the context and the clarity that's revealed by that data, by that information. So in short, use data to make decisions. People lie, numbers don't. Number 2, map it out. You see, Brenda gave us some fantastic advice by saying, map out where you're starting from and just track where you go. That's your data. Map out where you start from and track what happens from there. Because really, that's what gives all data its meaning. Knowing where you started from is what adds context to the other data points that you collect along the way. Now, once you get that data, it must be presented neutrally, not positive, not negative. The data is just the data. It's numbers, it's stats, and the stats don't come with any connotation in and of themselves. And we need to be very careful to interpret data as such. Why? Because the point of data is to allow us to think critically and neutrally about what's really happening. But when we start mixing emotions in with the data, it gets kind of messy. So remember, take a non-judgmental approach to interpreting that data. And of course, keep track of where you start from in order to get the most from it. Now, number 3 is celebrate data. Celebrate learning, celebrate reading, celebrate school, celebrate knowledge. The squad got into a conversation about motivation, and the point that was brought up was, hey, if you want people to feel motivated to do something, you need to show them how great it is to actually do the thing that you want them to do. So if you want your students to commit to literacy and reading, you need to talk to them about how the stars of their generation, Lil Wayne, Kanye, Kendrick, Cole, etc., they value reading. They value literacy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do what they do. Now, if you're a school leader and you want a more data-driven approach, then you've got to show people how using data can propel themselves and your school into greatness. That's what's going to unlock that intrinsic motivation that they have within themselves. Lead from the front and celebrate the power of data when it's applied in your school. Really, really good stuff today. Now, look, we're going to give you a little break on the announcements and the teacher spotlight this week. We're going to let you out of school, out of class early today, but I've got to talk to you really quick first. More than any time in recent history, for all of us, life is challenging. Pandemics, wars, the great resignation of teachers around the globe, it's been challenging, and we recognize that. And the thing about teaching that makes it even more challenging is that it tends to be a relatively thankless profession. And even more than that, when you do get to see the fruits of your labor and you do get to see one of your students go on to do amazing things and they were inspired by you, well, sometimes that takes decades to play out. And it might not be easy to see how impactful you really are in the moment, in the classroom, every single day. So I just wanted to let you know that you, no matter how hard it gets, you matter. You're valued. You're important. And yes, the work that you do is important, and the work that you do matters, and the work that you do is valued. But even more critical than that, you are important and valued, and you matter. And every single day that you walk into that classroom or that school and you give everything that you have to those children, you make a difference. And as long as you show up and you give them your best, you've got a chance, you've got a shot every day to change a life. And that's something to be extremely proud of, no matter the circumstance or the situation. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for who you are. And thank you for tuning in to this week's podcast. And we'll see you on the next one.